So again, I'll just hit number 1. Now let's take care of this little ring part here real quick. So what I'm going to do is we're going to ignore this for just a sec. We'll duplicate this in a sec, but I want to create the front ring part here. So I'm going to go into face mode, and I'm going to select this face, and I'm going to double click on this face to get the loop. I'm going to hold the shift key and click here, double click, here, double click. So I'm going to select 3 of these basically to extrude out basically 2 of these. Or actually, looking at that, looks like I shifted over. I could do that. Maybe I'll do it this way. Actually, I think I'll do it this way. We'll just leave it this way, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control E. And then again, I'm always grabbing the blue arrow. So I'm going to grab the blue arrow, pull out some geometry a little bit, get a little bit of thickness there. And then I'm going to switch to this point here, hold the shift key, double click, click here, and then double click. So I have these 2 edge loops, not the third one, just these 2. And repeat that action, Control E, and then grab the blue arrow and basically extrude that out. So that I get kind of this sort of cap here, and that's what we're looking for basically. If we go back to here, you can see this sort of metal cap here. And then I want to add, because if I hit number, let me click out, go to object mode. If we hit number 3, you can see it kind of softens that detail. And I want kind of crisp edges here. So again, I can double click on the edge loop tool, make sure relative distance is selected, and then just add a few edge loops here to tighten up the geometry. Again, this is the higher res mesh. So I'm going to add one here, one here, one here, one here. And then on the side here, I'm going to kind of bring one up right to that edge. Again, don't go all the way up, but close. One here, and then one more. Sometimes it's hard to add it. There we go. One more right there. And that looks pretty good. So click out with the arrow, go back to object mode, and then hit number 3. After I click off, you can see how I'm not holding that crispness, especially when I turn off wireframe line shaded here. You can see that nice crisp little area here, especially if we add 3 on this guy. You can see now how this geo is starting to really come together here. So let's go ahead and hit number 1 on there. Hit number 1 on this guy. And actually, let me bring on wireframe unsheeted again. Just a little easier to see here. So now I'm going to kind of line these guys up. I'm going to go to my top view for this. And I might not have the exact same numbers as that one, but I'm going to kind of bring it up to about, I think, there. Actually, that one, I went all the way up to the top. Let me look at the reference real quick. Yeah, there's a little gap there, so I could have a little bit more spacing there. Something like that. Okay, so now you can see I have all this history and everything here. So this point I'm going to delete history, freeze transforms, center pivot, and I will rename this. And just to save time here, the low poly has these, if I open it up, this ring handle. So I can copy this just by hitting Control C, and then click on this guy, and then click in here and hit Control V. But instead of, and ring handle 01 is okay, but I am going to add high in here, just so I know this is the higher res version. So I'm going to add high, and then 01 there. The low, these I didn't add low, but I should have added low on there. So it's a good separation to have that. So now I have that set up there, and now it's real easy to duplicate. So here's the trick with duplication with these rings here. You can do Control D to duplicate, and I can drag it out however far I want. And I'm kind of looking at the other one as a reference, and maybe I'll look at the, yeah, there's quite a bit of gap between these guys actually, maybe about that far. And then now I can hit simply Shift D, and it will just repeat that same distance and that same action, which is pretty cool, right? So it looks like I've got 11 of them, and you can see each one is numbered as they go down. So that one's 10, and then 9, and then 8, and 7, and so forth, which is very, very cool. Then I can select all these guys, and again, freeze transforms. And now, you know, they're basically all set up here. So last thing is the handle. You can see the handle, I added these extra divisions here. So what I'm going to do is go into face mode, click here, double click to get the ring here. That's what I did on the end there. But then there's this little face in the front here. I'm going to hold Shift key and select 4 of these, and maybe the next group, I think I'm just going to do, yeah, I'll do 4 again. But then the next group I'll do 2, and the next group I'll do 2. So it'll get kind of progressively smaller as it goes down. And it needs to overlap a little bit. If we look at the reference here, the last one, it has this like little hook that basically holds in the straps and overlaps that last ring. So I'm thinking something like that might be good. I could even go up 1 more, but I think that'll be enough. We may just adjust these guys slightly just by sliding them down. So now I have to do the same thing on their side. So I just have to remember 4 and 4 and then 2 and 2. So I'm just going to flip to the other side here, hold the Shift key, these 2 and then 2 more, and then these 2 and then 2 more, and then 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. So basically I have the same on both sides and then that whole ring here. And now I'm going to hit Control E to extrude and then grab the blue arrow and kind of pull out a little bit. Kind of want it to go above the geometry of this guy. And so basically I'm just pulling out the arrow a tiny bit, something like that. That looks pretty good. And then, yeah, I think that'll work just fine. And I can right click, go to object mode, and I can hit number 3 and you can kind of see how that's kind of holding in position there. I could add some edge loops in here if I wanted this to be a little bit firmer along here. But to be honest, I'm not quite sure yet. I mean, this whole thing could be a separate geometry to actually cap on there. So that would be another way to do that. Instead of doing the extrude, like we could actually let me do it that way. Let me undo all this. And so yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to double click on this ring, and we're going to do an extrude. So I'm going to hit Control E to extrude out the geometry. And I'm going to pull it out to get kind of a cap here like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make this piece down here a separate piece that basically will be separated from here. And so I'll follow that same path of like duplicate face that we did before. So I'll select these 4 faces, and these 2, and these 2. And then I'm going to flip to the other side and do the same thing essentially. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then, or actually I could do just one side at a time. Actually, I think I will do that. Let me deselect that. Yeah, I'll just do the one side here. So what I'm going to do here is now I'm going to duplicate face. So again, that's under Edit Mesh, Duplicate. And I'll just kind of remember the settings here. So I'll move this out to a certain amount. Let's go up to 0.0, I don't know, 0.04 or something. 0.04. Let's try that. Yeah, so that's close to the edge there, but not exactly. That'll work. And so now I just had that piece selected there, and so I'm going to delete history, freeze, transform, center, pivot, and then I'm going to repeat the action on the other side. So I'm going to, again, go to face mode, select these 4 faces, these 4, and then these 2, and these 2. And I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Duplicate, and then bring it up a little bit. And that was 0.04, so I can just type in a value of 0.04. And so I know that's exactly the same value as the other one. And so now I can go to Object Mode, delete history, freeze, transform, set up pivot. So now with each of these, I'll select this one first, go to Face Mode, select all these faces, and I'll do an extrude, Control E. And I'm going to go ahead and basically just pull it in like that to some degree. Maybe, I think what I'll do is I'll extrude it into a certain amount, like, let's see, 0.0, we'll go negative 0.0, maybe 2. And then I'm going to continue to extrude in these guys here. So let me isolate the object here. Go into face mode. Select these faces here. Flip around. Again, hit Control E, and then bring them down inside the geometry here. And then I'm going to go ahead and delete those faces as I bring them in. So basically I'm creating like a clip kind of ID here, like this will hold in place whatever. And so again, I have to basically get rid of the reverse the normals. So I have that in here. And yeah, now I have that there. In fact, I don't need to have this piece. This is actually a really important lesson. Once you have one thing, if it's a symmetrical type object, which this is, you can essentially duplicate it and move it to the other side very easy. So if we hit W here, I'm going to go ahead and delete history, freeze, transform, center pivot, and then I'll hit Control G, right? And that groups it, and that puts the center point there. And then I'll do Control D, and then I'll scale it in the, let's see, right? So -1 in the Y. So you can see what has happened down there. It's a little trick. It's called, basically I'm scaling it onto the other side. You could also mirror the object. That'd be another way to do it, but I just wanted to show you another way. So each of these pieces are in a group now, which if I hit the F key here, you can kind of see them here. But I can delete the history on these guys and freeze, transform, center pivot, and do the same thing on the other guy. Delete history, freeze, transform, center pivot. And what I can also do is rename them. So if I want, I don't know what the name would be for this. These would be like clips or something. So I could put them in a group. Maybe I'll just put them in a group right now. And let's see. So they each have their own group here. So I'm going to actually move them out of this group. And now this group I can delete. And then this group, which is right here, I can rename it. And I'll call this clip group or something like that. Clip. And then group. Oop. There we go. Looks like I got some extra transforms. If you have a transform that's highlighted gray like that, you did a transformation, you can basically just delete it and kind of get rid of these guys here. So now I have all these rings from ring 1 to ring 11. So again, with them selected here, I can group those. I'm going to hit Control G, and I'll call this ring group, but I'll call it ring high group, and then group. And that way, I'll know the difference between that group and this group, even though it's in a completely different hierarchy overall. But now I can move this group as a whole, and I'll center the pivot on this group. But I can now, if I need to readjust this, like move them as a whole unit. Maybe I kind of want to space them out between the two there. I think something like that would look kind of good. Yeah. And then basically select everything, hit the number 3 key, take a quick look. Again, these caps might need a little bit more work. Maybe add a little more definition to the edges. But again, these would be sculpted detail in Mudbox. Actually, I'm not going to redo the Mary Cross, but I will add a little bit more resolution to one of them just so you guys can see that in action. Maybe I would add an edge loop along here just to make sure this has kind of a firmer bottom here. And then probably along the 2 edges at least. And then it kind of does round off. So I might end up adjusting these guys here in terms of the shape of them. Again, if I hit number 3. I mean, that kind of has a little bit similar shape to this little cap here. It's a little bit different. It has a little bit more even transition. So what I can do is start to move some of these verts, these outer verts here. So let me actually do that real quick. I'll isolate this object and basically go into vertex mode. I'll select these verts here, hold the shift key, select these guys, and hit the W key and basically just kind of move them back a little bit. You can see here. And so basically that's the kind of action we want. We want it to be sort of a smoother transition as it rolls around. All right, and then I could add maybe one division along the edge here like that to kind of maybe give a little bit of firmness just so it's not quite so round. If I hit number 3 here, that looks actually pretty good now. All right, so bring it back. So again, I won't do this right now, but I would basically duplicate this onto this side. So I'll actually select this one and just delete it and do that same process where I group it and mirror it across and everything. So basically that is, in a nutshell, it's a lot of work, a lot of steps to get this high-res version of the handle here. But I think we've got it pretty good here for sculpting in ZBrush. Here again is the low version. And then next tutorial we'll actually go over maybe the cap here. We'll add a little bit of work to that. And then we'll add the straps. We'll probably do both of those, maybe in the same scene. So until next time, go ahead and delete this cube here. It's extra. See you soon. Cheers.